Guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another What's for Dinner video. The first meal I'm going to share with you is a steak bites dinner, and I'll be serving it I think with mashed potatoes. We'll see. You'll find out in just a minute. But I'm going to start by, it's a couple hours before I need to even make dinner, but I'm going to start by marinating the steak bites, so let's get started with that. Alright, we're getting started with a half a cup of soy sauce, or I am using coconut aminos, which is a soy sauce substitute, but either one is fine. And now we're adding a third cup of olive oil, a quarter cup of Worcestershire sauce, 2 tablespoons of dried basil, 1 tablespoon of dried parsley. You can also add 1 teaspoon of black pepper, but I am choosing to omit that. And then, let's see, about a teaspoon of minced garlic. I'm gonna do a generous teaspoon. You could also do this in a bag, but I'm just doing it in this dish here and just stirring that together, and then we're gonna add in the steak. You can let this marinate for 15 minutes or up to 24 hours. Obviously, the longer, the better. It's gonna be about probably 2 to 2.5 hours for me. So if you are not new, you know that we bought a half of a cow, but these are a couple of sirloin steaks that I had in our freezer from before we got that. And so this is 2 8-ounce sirloin steaks that I'm just cubing up. So it's a pound. You want a pound to a pound and a half of steak for this. Or obviously you can adjust it based on what you need. Alright, so I took the meat out of the marinade. We're going to cook that up. It shouldn't take too long because they're little pieces. Got some potatoes boiling. This is too big of a pot for it, but it's all I had because I'm using this one for some broccoli. So we're just going to steam the broccoli, make some simple mashed potatoes with probably a little bit of almond milk, butter, and salt, maybe some parsley or something. And then we're going to cook this up and dinner will be done. So my steak bites got done, but my mashed potatoes weren't done yet, so I just pulled the steak out of the pan so it wouldn't get overcooked. Threw it in a bowl with a little bit of butter and covered it with some foil just to keep it nice and warm and juices in there. My potatoes were done, so I drained the water, and I do this a little different each time, so I still like to, I guess, show it to you. It's nothing complicated, but I'm just mashing it up with my little Pampered Chef. I think that's called like the meat chopper or something, but I love it for mashed potatoes. And put a little bit of butter, a little bit of almond milk, and we don't mind our mashed potatoes a little bit chunky, so I don't whip it, but you can always do that obviously. And then I added in a little bit of sour cream and some grated Parmesan just because that's what I had on hand. I like to do mashed potatoes kind of like I do my soups. I just kind of clean out the fridge. Whatever I've got that goes with it, I'll throw it in there. And then I added a little bit of salt. So we served our steak bites over top of our mashed potatoes along with some steamed broccoli. And all I did to that was add a little bit of butter. And this dinner was delicious. We really, really enjoyed it, and it was super easy and quick to put together. Okay guys, so for this next dinner we're going to be having a shepherd's pie or cottage pie. I know there's a big debate on what's what, but debate it if you will. Apparently shepherd's pie is supposed to be ground lamb, cottage pie is with ground beef, but not everyone goes by that, so do what you will. I was prepping some potatoes to boil up for some mashed potatoes once again, And then we're moving on to dicing up an onion, and we're going to saute that in a little bit of avocado oil. If you guys are new here, I want to just say welcome. I'm glad you're here, and I would love it if you would consider subscribing before you leave. I love to share recipes along with vlogs and DIYs and just kind of some overall lifestyle type content, and I would love it if you would subscribe and join my little YouTube family. Now I'm dicing up some carrots, and we're getting about 2 cups of vegetables. So I did some diced carrots and then some frozen green beans. You can use frozen, fresh, canned, whatever you want. At least that's my rule. I'm not really following a recipe here. So after the onions have begun to soften, I'm also going to add in 1 pound of lean ground beef, and we're just going to cook that through. Feel free to salt and pepper your meat if you'd like. I don't generally cook with ground pepper, but you could of course add that if that's your thing. And then we're going to add about, I don't know, maybe a tablespoon or so of some thyme, and then we will do the same with some parsley. So once the potatoes are done, we will just drain out the water, and I'm going to keep this pretty simple. I'm just going to do some salt, a little bit of sour cream, as well as a tiny bit of almond milk I'll add later. I also had some mashed potatoes left over from the previous night, or the previous meal. I don't know if it was the previous night or not, but I just added that all in there. I probably didn't have as much mashed potatoes as it would make sense for the size of dish I made, but I don't know. You know, I feel like you can just make your own rules. It was plenty for us, but if you're feeding a family, you might want to make more mashed potatoes than we did, but I was just using up the potatoes that I had left on hand. Now back to the meat, I'm just adding in a nice spoonful of garlic, saute that, or I don't know, let that cook, I guess, for another minute or so, and then maybe about a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, and then we're going to add in about 3 tablespoons of flour, and we're going to just mix that and let that cook down for a minute. You just want that flour to cook a little bit and get well incorporated, and then we'll help everything thicken up in just a little bit. Now we're adding in the vegetables. I also added in about a can, or half a can rather, of canned corn, and then I'm using about 1 cup of vegetable broth. You could also use beef broth. I'm just using, once again, whatever I have on hand. I don't like strict rules when it comes to cooking, so if you do, then you can follow the rules, but I just don't do it that way. So now I am just greasing my baking dish and putting our meat and vegetable mixture on the bottom, and you're just going to spread that out evenly. Now you're going to see in just a minute here that I used too small of a dish, and I'm going to switch that to a 9x13 in just a minute here. This seems to be a problem with me lately with cooking. You're going to see in the next recipe I did this a lot, using the wrong size dish, so making more dishes instead of less for me. And then I'm going to spread out my mashed potatoes on top, and you'll see once again the mashed potatoes was a little bit thin, so feel free to make more, but I was just kind of using up whatever I had left on hand. And then we're going to sprinkle some paprika on top, and then cover with some cheese. You could use, I don't know, I guess any cheese you wanted. I used some sliced mozzarella, because I was just using up what I had in the fridge. I feel like a broken record saying that all the time. And then you're going to bake this in the oven at 350 for, I don't know, about 30 to 45 minutes. Everything's cooked. You're just wanting it to heat through. You're wanting to get bubbly, and you're wanting the cheese to get all nice and melty, ooey gooey, just like this. And I don't know, it actually kind of looks weird. I don't know why. I don't know if some juices just rose to the top or something, but this was delicious. Hey guys, welcome back to another night of cooking. Tonight we are making a ham casserole with broccoli and rice, and this recipe does call for cream of chicken soup, and I don't have that. I don't usually buy that, so I'm also going to be making a homemade one of those, and I will include that in this video as well. So I'm getting started by melting down 2 tablespoons of butter over medium heat, and then we're going to saute 1/2 of an onion that I have diced up, and then we'll come back. All right, so I let these cook for about 5 minutes. The recipe says to add in another tablespoon of butter. Seems like a lot, but I like butter, so that's all right. A tablespoon or so of olive oil. The recipe calls for 2.5 cups of chicken broth and 1 1/4 cup of rice. I am trying to use up my homemade chicken broth that's in the freezer, and I did not take out enough to thaw earlier today, so I'm working on thawing it right now. I'm just gonna add in 1 cup of brown rice. This is 2 cups of chicken broth. I need to go get a little bit more. I know the recipe called for a little more than 1 cup of rice, but 1 cup's enough for us. Now that being said, I probably don't need to do a full, there's my timer, or the oven's preheated to 350. Because I'm only doing the 1 cup of rice, I probably don't need to do this extra 1/2 cup of chicken broth, but I just am. I have it frozen in 2 cup, sorry, I just made a whole bunch of noise. I have it frozen in 2 cup portions, so that's just what I'm going to. All right, and now you want to bring this to a boil, so I'm gonna turn up the heat on this. And then you're going to, so you're gonna bring it to a boil and then reduce heat to a simmer and cover tightly to cook for 7 minutes. So once this comes to a boil, I will reduce heat and cover. All right, so while that is simmering and I've got the rest of my chicken broth thawing on the stove to do the cream of chicken soup, I'm gonna make the seasoning mixture for that. Let's see, we're gonna do 1/2 teaspoon of parsley, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And if you watch my videos, I never use black pepper in anything, but I'm going to use it, but I don't think I'm gonna use a full 1/2 teaspoon. I'm not sure why, but I just feel like putting it in this time. I really don't care for black pepper, but let's see, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder and 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. And we will pull this out in just a minute to make the cream of chicken soup. All right, so now I'm supposed to add 2 cups of broccoli florets. I am going to just do it like this as to not splash everywhere. And I'm just guessing, plus we like veggies, so I might do a little extra. Always add extra veggies, which is why I always run out of room in my skillet when I do stuff like this. Okay, so it says refrain from stirring, cover for another 8 minutes. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, so over here I've got approximately 2 1/2 cups of chicken broth. So I'm gonna add in 1/2 cup of milk. I'm using just plain almond milk because that's what we have. We're gonna heat this up to a low boil. And while that's happening, we are going to take another cup of milk, 3/4 cup of flour, and those seasonings earlier, or from earlier I should say. I'm just gonna borrow my whisk here and we're gonna whisk this together. All right, so we whisked this and it did get thicker, and we're going to add this to the boiling mixture, and we're gonna whisk that for 5 to 10 minutes, and it says to just keep whisking continuously. I need to get a spatula. I think it'll still work even though I'm using almond milk. A lot of things do work with that substitute, so I guess we'll find out. Maybe it wouldn't get as thick, but I don't know, looks pretty good. All right, so the timer just went off for this, and it says to turn off heat and remove cover and let it stand for 10 minutes. I don't really understand it. I'm just following the directions. So I'm going to continue to whisk this cream of chicken soup for another few minutes. It does say that this will also thicken as it cools, but it's thickening up very nicely, so I think this is gonna work. So I'm gonna do this for another few minutes, and we're gonna let that set for about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna add the rest of the ingredients and then pop it in the oven. All right, so at this point, my rice doesn't seem fully cooked, but I feel like it's okay because it's going into the oven still, so I'm just gonna keep going with it. We're going to add in now 1/2 cup of sour cream. I'm going to eyeball this. 3/4 cup of milk. The condensed soup. Now this might be getting, all right, I'm a little concerned. I'm a little concerned with space here, so I really need to get a bigger like skillet pan. I'm going to just grab a bowl and I'm gonna mix everything in a bowl. This is gonna add another dirty dish, but I feel like this is just asking to be a mess. All right, so now we're gonna add in that cream of chicken soup. Now this actually, oh, sometimes I feel like I'm a hot mess. I feel like that made more than 1 can's worth. Hang on a second. Okay, I was right. The cream of chicken made about 3 cups, and a can of cream of chicken soup is about 1.3 cups. I'm gonna add in just a little bit more. Then I guess I'm gonna save this for another recipe. All right, now I'm adding in 2 cups of diced ham. This is the pre-cooked sliced ham from Aldi. I get that and use it for like a ton of things. And then we're gonna add in 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. And my 9x13 casserole dish is in the refrigerator with leftovers, so I may have to divide this up into 2 dishes. But that's what I'm gonna do next. All right, as you can see, I'm kind of a hot mess when it comes to dish sizes tonight. Oh my gosh, but we got it figured out. This looks like an obnoxious amount of food for 2 people. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm taking another cup of cheese, sprinkling that on top. And let's see, we're going to bake, I'm gonna cover this and bake it for 10 minutes at 350, and then we're gonna add a topping and bake for another 10 minutes. So 15 minutes adding something, then 10 minutes. All right, so it's been 15 minutes. I've got 2 tablespoons of melted butter and 1 cup of crushed crackers. Gonna mix that together, and then we're gonna sprinkle this on top. Remember, I have mine divided up into 2 containers, so. And we're gonna pop it back in uncovered for another 10 minutes. I'm gonna be honest, it looks a little liquidy to me, and it might thicken up. I'm gonna let it do the 10 minutes and maybe let it sit for a little bit before we serve it. Maybe because the cream of chicken, the homemade stuff isn't quite as thick as the store-bought stuff. I don't think I adjusted any other liquids wrong as I was adjusting the recipe. I don't remember. I mean, it smells good. I think it's gonna taste good, but let's see how it comes out. All right, guys, so here it is. I do think it came out a little bit more liquidy than it was supposed to, but probably if you follow the recipe exactly, you won't have any problems. I'm gonna let it set for just a few minutes before we serve it up, but it smells good, so I think it's gonna at least taste good. Also, just so you can see, this is the rest of the homemade cream of chicken, and you can see that it thickened up quite a bit. So I'm gonna save this. I think the website said that you could freeze it, so that is what I'm going to do. But it definitely did thicken up, so. I don't think this was the culprit in the recipe because it looks about as thick as the canned stuff does. All right, guys, so I wanted to give an update on that last recipe. I'm editing the video. Hope you don't mind my super casual, like practically laying on the couch position right now. But I did want to update on that ham and rice bake, I think it was called, or casserole, whatever. The leftovers, excuse me, the leftovers came out a little bit better, and I think it's because it cooked longer. So here's the mistake I made. The cream of chicken soup, the homemade stuff, great, no problem. All my ratios were fine. I should have gone with my gut and cooked it on the stove until the rice was fully cooked and then put it in the oven. Once the rice was fully cooked, all of the broth that I used was absorbed. So I would say recipe is a good one. Just make sure the rice is cooked before you transfer it to a casserole dish. So it was all sorts of struggles, but it came out good in the end, and I would make it again. So anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. That really does help me out, and I would love it if you would consider subscribing so that you don't miss out on my future videos. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you next time.